Between 1965 and 1968, the United States Navy lost fighter aircraft over North Vietnam at a rate that triggered a classified internal crisis. The air-to-air kill ratio had collapsed to just 2-to-1. Missiles designed to make dogfighting obsolete failed more often than they worked. The program that emerged from this disaster, TOPGUN, exists only because the Navy was finally forced to confront a truth it had spent years burying. 2-to-1. That was the cold official number. For every 2 enemy MiGs shot down, 1 American jet was lost. In the corridors of the Pentagon, that ratio sounded survivable. In the cockpit, it was a death sentence. Navy pilots flying F-4 Phantoms, machines billed as the most advanced fighters on Earth, were being hunted by MiG-17 fighters and MiG-21 fighters built a decade earlier. The kill ratio, once 10-to-1 in Korea, had collapsed. The promise of missile supremacy shattered as AIM-7 Sparrows failed to guide and AIM-9 Sidewinders missed or refused to fire. After-action reports revealed that the radar homing of the AIM-7 was crippled by North Vietnamese electronic countermeasures. Nearly 30% of Sparrows launched in 1967 and 1968 failed to lock or detonated harmlessly behind their targets. Carrier logs from the USS Enterprise recorded Sparrow fail rates climbing from 15% to 28% as enemy jamming grew more sophisticated. The Sidewinder, trusted for close-in kills, was no better. Its infrared seeker depended on liquid nitrogen cooling, giving pilots just 10 seconds of engagement time before the missile's eyes went blind. In the heat and humidity over Hanoi, 12% of Sidewinders failed to lock, and another 22% missed outright in cloud or haze. The numbers told a story of technical overconfidence and catastrophic loss. Pilots launched missiles that fizzled, then found themselves in knife fights for which they were barely prepared. The official records, stamped and filed, masked the reality. Men were dying because the system had promised them miracles, then handed them duds. Behind every statistic was a crew that never came home. The audit was coming. The Navy could no longer hide from its own disaster. Captain Frank Alt's name landed on a memo that would shake the Navy's highest ranks. In 1968, Admiral Thomas Moorer ordered Alt to conduct a sweeping review of air-to-air missile performance in Vietnam. The result was a 480-page classified dossier that tore through the Navy's self-image like shrapnel. Buried in its tables was a number that sent a chill through every squadron: 3.6 hours. That was the average air combat maneuvering training a Navy pilot received before facing North Vietnamese MiGs. Not per week, not per month. Total before combat. Alt's team combed through flight logs, simulator records, and after-action debriefs. They found a system built on shortcuts and wishful thinking. Missile doctrine had gutted dogfighting from the curriculum, leaving pilots to improvise in life-or-death duels. The report detailed how the average pilot logged barely 350 total flight hours, far below the 500-hour standard the Air Force quietly maintained. The numbers weren't just embarrassing, they were deadly. Missile failure rates soared above 30%. But the real killer was training. Pilots who had never faced a real opponent in a turning fight were suddenly thrown into the crucible over Hanoi. Alt's conclusion was blunt. The Navy needed a weapons school urgently. His formal recommendation landed on the Chief of Naval Operations' desk with the force of an indictment. The directive was immediate. It ordered the establishment of an advanced fighter weapons school to centralize air combat instruction and rewrite the rules of engagement. For the first time, the Navy admitted its own pilots were being sent to war unprepared. The classified report circulated among fleet commanders and the Bureau of Naval Personnel, igniting arguments and demands for change. In the words of one carrier division commander, the report's hard-won truths left no room for delay. The reckoning had begun, and the future of naval air combat would be decided by what happened next. March 3rd, 1969. On the edge of Naval Air Station, Miramar, 8 pilots gathered in a condemned trailer with peeling paint and a leaky roof. The Navy had given them a shoestring budget, just $25,000, barely enough to keep the lights on. There were no banners, no brass bands, and no promises. Only a classified directive, a battered roster, and the urgent knowledge that the next time they faced a MiG, their lives would depend on what happened in that cramped space. The first class of the United States Navy Fighter Weapons School, TOPGUN, was not a hand-picked elite, but a desperate experiment. The founding memos made it clear: teach what the manuals forgot, and fix what the system broke. Every dollar spent, every hour flown, was counted against a ledger of dead pilots and lost jets. The instructors, drawn from combat squadrons, wrote the syllabus as they went, scavenging for chalkboards and film projectors, patching together a curriculum with whatever resources they could find. The trailer's thin walls did nothing to muffle the tension. These men were told, in blunt terms, that the Navy's future in the air rested on them. There was no margin for error and no time for ceremony. The urgency was absolute. Inside that condemned trailer, the blueprint for survival was being drafted in real time. 5 weeks. That was all the time a pilot had to unlearn everything the missile age had drilled into him. The syllabus at Miramar was relentless. 250 to 300 hours of academics in flight, crammed into days that started before sunrise and ended long after dark. There were no shortcuts. Every sortie meant pushing the airframe to its limits, pulling 6, sometimes 7 Gs in tight turns that left arms numb and vision tunneling to black. The Douglas A-4 Skyhawk, with its compact frame and sharp turn rate, became the enemy. Instructors flew it like North Vietnamese MiG-17s, dragging students into turning fights where a single mistake meant simulated death. The real test came after wheels touched down. Debriefs stretched for hours, every maneuver frozen on film and dissected in front of the class. Rank offered no protection. A lieutenant commander could be ripped apart by a junior instructor if he missed a shot, broke formation, or lost sight of his adversary. Humiliation was part of the process, an intentional stripping away of ego and bad habits. Manuals were rewritten in real time, shaped by each failure and hard-won insight. Physiological stress was measured and logged. Pilots learned the warning signs of G-induced blackout, but sometimes that knowledge came too late. The risk was real. G-lock could mean the loss of a jet, or worse. By the end of the course, only those who could endure the physical pain and psychological scrutiny earned the right to graduate. The goal was brutal clarity, to produce a fighter pilot who could survive a knife fight at Mach 1, not just a technician who trusted his missiles. The crucible at Miramar was the Navy's answer to its own disaster, a place where survival was earned, never granted. May 1972. In the skies above North Vietnam, Navy F-4 crews hunted MiGs with a precision that had not been seen in years. On a single day, Lieutenant Randy Cunningham and Radar Intercept Officer Willie Driscoll scored 3 confirmed kills, including the elusive MiG-21 ace known as Colonel Tomb. Their radio calls crackled with exhaustion and adrenaline. One missile after another found its mark, and the dogfight spiraled from cloud layer to treetop in seconds. By the end of their sortie, the numbers were undeniable. 3 enemy jets down, 0 American losses. This was not luck or a new missile. It was the result of 5 weeks of relentless training, every maneuver drilled and dissected until muscle memory replaced panic. Carrier logs and after-action reports from Operation Linebacker told the same story across the fleet. The Navy's kill ratio, once a humiliating 2-to-1, now stood at 12-to-1. For every 12 MiGs shot down, only 1 Navy jet failed to return. Meanwhile, the Air Force, still clinging to its old doctrine, struggled to improve on its stagnant 2-to-1 ratio. Internal memos from Air Force Command dated that same month reveal frustration and disbelief at the Navy's sudden dominance. The difference was not in the hardware, but in the hands that flew it. Top Gun had rewritten the rules of survival, and for the first time since the war began, American pilots owned the skies. But beneath the surface of this operational victory, one question lingered: how many lives had been spent to buy this lesson? 58 names. That's the number etched into Navy casualty rolls. 58 aviators killed in aerial combat over Vietnam. Each statistic conceals a life, a son, a friend, a voice silenced by a missile that failed, or a tactic that never made it into the manual. The official records, stamped and filed, list them as killed in action, but the story doesn't end there. In declassified prisoner of war transcripts, a captured F-4 pilot describes the moment his Sidewinder refused to fire. He radioed for help, heard nothing but static, then watched a MiG-21 close in and felt the cockpit shudder as cannon shells tore through the fuselage. He survived the ejection, but not the years in a North Vietnamese prison. Others weren't so lucky. Families back home received telegrams and a flag, but never an explanation for why their sons went to war with so little preparation. The price of every lesson learned at Top Gun was paid in advance by those who never returned. For every pilot who walked out of Miramar's trailer, another had been shot down over Hanoi, left behind by a system that believed its own press releases. The Navy's triumph in 1972 was written in the blood of those 58, a debt that could never be repaid, only acknowledged. 200 United States Navy jets were lost before the kill ratio was finally reversed. Training failures cost lives and then forced a transformation. Today, every pilot trusts their survival to lessons paid for in blood. Complacency is not history, it is a threat waiting to resurface. What price are we willing to pay next?